And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. My name is David Carrico, and I am so honored and excited to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn, into the Now You See TV studios for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, turn the temperature gauge completely up because it's going to sizzle and it's going to fizzle. Not fizzle, but fizzle sizzle. But anyway, our broadcast tonight is entitled The Tartarian King of a Fierce Countenance. It's going to be a peeling of the onion, tracing this bloodline with all kinds of things that are just becoming more and more obvious, and it is just going to be a tremendous ride, I guarantee you. So with that, get ready, because it all starts right now, because we are now
live. What's up, guys? I got in close to the camera that time. Hopefully you didn't smell my breath. It's probably not smelling too good. I just been drinking coffee over here in the studio. Let me know if you guys are drinking coffee. Let me know where you guys are from. Me and David love to see that stuff on there because it just lets us know that there's so many people around the world that are hungry for the truth and hungry for just the things of righteousness and awesome things, right? This is what we're all about. And tonight I just want to tell you guys a couple things, give you guys a couple headlines. If you're watching this after the fact and you want to skip past this, feel free. But I want to tell you guys, this is really important. We're doing a Pentecost event here at the Puritan Barn on the 28th of this month. Registration is open. It'll be closing here in about a week. There's already several hundred people registered. Last year we baptized over 100 people. We had awesome gathering, just so many people and just to enjoy. This year is going to be even better planned, better done, I believe, hopefully. Anyways, that's the goal. But we'd love to see you guys if you're close by, or if you feel like coming out here, you feel like this is a journey you need to make. We're opening it up that day. So make sure you guys check out the link below so that you can get registered. And we hope to see you guys. David, you got anything to say about that? And I got a couple other things I need to announce as well.
Well, I'm just excited about it. It's going to be tremendous every time we get to meet our listeners one-on-one in person. It's always a marvelous thing. So be a part of that if you can. Also, I might say tomorrow night, FOJC Radio, Sunday Night Live, 8 p.m. on our underground YouTube channel. We're going to have a broadcast entitled The Priest of the Feathered Serpent. So if you might want to check that out, I think it'll be a blessing to you.
Very good. And so the things I got to announce, I want to let you guys know about our sponsors. And this is really, we're very thankful for our sponsors, and I know that they're thankful for us too. I didn't get to mention them last week, and I know that it hurts every time I don't mention them for them. So I want to mention them this week because it's really important that I do this. So bear with me, guys. I know a lot of you guys hate this, but I know that without these sponsors, without the people in our lives that help make things go around, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. So we're thankful for them. So I want to give them a shout out. We want to give a shout out to Watts Leather, custom leather pieces, just amazing stuff. Can make Bible covers, book covers, journals, belts, gun holsters, you name it. These guys, Joshua, can make them. Also, Sugar and Spice Soap Company. Natural soaps for your body. They don't have any harsh chemicals. Made by people we trust, and just beautiful soaps in general. They even have a Midnight Ride soap just for you guys in a Midnight Ride package. And you can get 10% off any order with the code NYSTV. So make sure to check that out. Also one of our primary sources for Now You See TV to be able, and for FOJC to be able to continue, is our websites. And we're talking about nystv.org and fojcradio.com. Both of the links are in the description here, but with either of those sites, just by you guys being a member or being able to get on there and check out our content and see what else we have going on, this is one of the primary sources that actually keep Now You See TV and FOJC going. Your guys' support, your guys' all of that stuff. And so we're thankful for that. And for all of you guys that already do that, we are so blessed to know you, and we're so thankful because I believe that we're making a difference in this world. And because of you guys, we're able to do so, you know. And I know this is a long intro. We don't normally do them this long, but I really just want to say thank you to guys. And I want to pass it over to David. Let's ride, David.
All right, here we go. It's time to ride. And our ride this evening is entitled The Tartarian King of Fierce Countenance. And we'll begin with the text in Daniel, the 8th chapter, in the 23rd verse, where we have the text of prophecy. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Now, in the context of the 8th chapter of Daniel, this is speaking to the kingdom of Greece. It's speaking prophetically to the breakup of the kingdom of Alexander. And Joseph Benson, in his commentary, has a very, very insightful comment here. He says, and in the latter end of their kingdom, when their power was diminishing and the Roman Empire beginning to be established in Greece. Now, this was very much fulfilled back in the days of the demise of the kingdom of Alexander when it split into 4 parts, but it also is very applicable to right now in the latter time. Today, Greece is pretty much just a toady of the European Union. They have lost all of their, pretty much given up all their power, national sovereignty, and they are almost a non-entity as an independent nation. They are certainly at a time where this scripture would very much apply to the nation of Greece right now. And in Lang's commentary, he has a very insightful note about the fella here that could understand the dark sentences. And basically in the Hebrew, that means a riddle. And Mr. Lang comments, he said it denotes his art of cunning, dissimulation by which he is able to conceal his purposes from friend and foe. You just don't know what this guy's up to. Even the people close to him, they think they know what he's all about, but they really don't. He's got an agenda. He's coming, and certainly the stage is set for the rise of such a one, is it not? And Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 49 and 50. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from the end of the earth. Now, I want us to think back to the last midnight ride that I presented, and there were several scriptures we had in Jeremiah and Ezekiel that spoke of a foe that was coming against Israel from the north that was associated with horses. Now, this is different. It's a nation from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle. And this nation that comes from the end of the earth is associated with the eagle, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. So we got a little different flavor here as we trace this out. And always, biblical symbolism is so amazing to me. The Bible is written by the Holy Ghost. It is timeless. He knows the end from the beginning, the future from the past, and he can use symbols that were written thousands of years ago that we understand now because he is God, because we have a supernatural, divinely inspired book. And it can use symbols like the bear. Well, everybody knows who the bear is. And the eagle, well, who's the eagle? Well, I think we all know, don't we? Now, in 2nd Esdras 11, 1 and 2, and 2nd Esdras is a book from the King James Apocrypha. It's not scripture, but I believe it is a book that is definitely very profitable, very profitable. And in 2nd Esdras 11, 1 and 2, then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. Now we see an eagle with 3 heads. And of course, this is a direct correlation in 2nd Esdras. In chapter 11, there are bullet points of comparison that I could draw between 2nd Esdras 11 and Revelation 13. I'll just show one. In 2nd Esdras 11, we see the eagle rising out of the sea. In Revelation 13 and 1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea. This is our Midnight Ride song, isn't it? And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So what we're having described in Revelation 13 and 2nd Esdras 11, we're having the same scene described using different symbology. And then it says in verse 12, and I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose 1 feather, and reigned over all the earth. Now, it is just irresistible not to apply this symbolism to what we obviously comes into the mind of everybody. Well, here in America, we're represented by the eagle, and the left-right controversy we hear every day. The left and the right are in constant battle. That's all every news broadcast you hear is about. And Esdras prophesied that out of the right, there's a feather going to come up. And it's also, there's a very profound thought, and John also has been meditating and thinking about this text a lot. But we have 3 heads on this eagle, and I know we're thinking it the same way. But here we have an eagle, and if this eagle does indeed represent America, which it's almost irresistible not to think so, we know what the left is, we know what the right is, but who's that in the middle?
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's super interesting to me, David. We talked a little bit about this before, but I think next week we're gonna get into a little bit more of that stuff. This is, I mean, all of this information right here, especially what you're talking about here, all of it's ringing bells left and right, right.
Yeah.
One thing too that was really interesting to me, it talked about that verse you said in Deuteronomy where it talks about coming from the ends of the earth. For some reason in my mind, I think of Operation High Jump and Operation Fishbowl, and Sir Admiral Byrd going to the ends of the earth trying to find something there. Now there's it's interesting to me, David, and I know this may or may not have anything to do with all that, but the idea that Germans went there post World War II, set up a community there, and that nobody's been able to breach that community is possible, but there might be some other beings there, right? I mean, what were they looking for out there?
They absolutely were.
And then
I firmly believe that.
Oh man, it's just interesting to me.
Yeah, and I'll not let go ahead and speak ahead here, but I'll say this: that next week on the Midnight Ride, John could be talking about that head in the middle, and it's becoming more and more clear. The more we peel this onion, the more it becomes clear. And the guy in the middle, that middle head of the eagle, we might have a pretty good handle on this fella.
Yeah.
And this could be huge. It really could.
Yeah, this prophecy of the 3-headed eagle is one of the most intriguing things I've ever read in my life, because you can go through this for days and still just be lining things up. It's so intriguing. That's why I give a lot of credit to 2nd Esdras, because
I do too.
This has got way more insight than just some random bum could have wrote.
Yeah. And this is a text, I don't know the first time we talked about this on the Midnight Ride. It was a good while back.
Yeah.
And the more we've talked about it and thought about it, the more right it feels. But in 2nd Esdras 11 and 35, and I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. And it's irresistible not to apply this to what we have going on, to the currents and the situation we have in America right now. This could be very, very, very timely. And the identity of the middle head, that middle head of the eagle, that could be huge, I guarantee you. Now, let's go to Ezekiel 38, and we're going to come down with a point by point. We're going to trace this bloodline, and we're going to be doing it very definitively. Ezekiel 38, and the word of the Lord came into me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshish and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And in the 10th chapter of the book of Genesis, in the table of nations, we have the grandchildren of Noah here identified. And I need verse 1 and 2 there, not 11 and 12.
Okay. I can pull it up for you if you want, or you got it.
Okay,
there.
well, if you want to, or
Genesis,
I can read it, whatever works. Yeah, we need verse 1 and 2 here.
Sorry about that, David.
Well, no problem. Hey,
okay.
live. This is live,
It's
and every
live.
once in a while.
It happens. So let me read the right verse to you guys.
Okay.
I don't have it up there, but I'll read it to you.
Go ahead and read it.
Okay. It is, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. And there you go.
All right. Now, we've talked in a previous Midnight Ride how from the 10th chapter of the book of Jubilees, how that Noah prayed when his grandchildren were being pounded by the spirits of the Nephilim, and that 90% were assigned to the abyss and 10% left above. Well, we're going to trace this line right from Scripture and right from history, and we're going to find some amazing things. This is Flavius Josephus, and Flavius Josephus wrote this. This is on page 36 of his complete works. Now they were the grandchildren of Noah, in honor of whom names were imposed on the nations that first seized upon them. Along Europe to Cadiz, and setting themselves on the land which they light upon, which none had inhabited before. They called the nations by their own names. For Gomer founded those whom the Greeks now call Galatians or Gauls. We did one of our midnight rides. We talked about how modern biblical scholarship will blur the identification of the Galatians with the Gauls.
Yeah.
This has been known from remotest antiquity. Going on, it says, but were then called Gomerites. Magog founded those that from him were named Magogites, who are by the Greeks called Scythians. Now that's huge. We're going to trace them by their Greek name of the Scythians. Now we have a little chart here to just help us keep this straight in our mind. We have Noah's son Japheth, and there to the left we can remember Gomer, Galatians, Gauls. That's on the left hand. And on the right, Magog to the Scythians. Now what we're going to see these lines come together. And the people we need to watch are on the right side there, the Scythians. And the Scythians, we're going to show that these are unbelievably jacked up, kill you, cut your head off, and eat you wild people. And the Scythians came over into the line from Gomer to the Gauls, and they became the Gali. They became the priesthood among the Gauls that eventually they founded the religion that became known as Druidism. And they did it by coming over into this other line, and we're going to trace this little hierarchy of giants. in the people of Galatia, they were not giants themselves, but there was a ruling class that ruled over the Galatians that were well over a foot taller than anyone else among them. And this is the people we're tracing. We're going to show that these are the Scythian crossovers that came over to be the priesthood that became known as the Galli. Now, we'll look at a little bit of what history tells us about these people. And Flavius Josephus, he was the Jewish historian, and he was there personally witnessed the siege of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. And contemporary with him, the fella Pliny the Elder, he died, I believe, in 69 A.D. And he was the Roman historian. I don't know if they ever met, but we're going to read from Pliny the Elder, also just a tremendously credible historian, and we're going to read about the Scythians from Pliny the Elder. And we'll read from Volume 1 on page 276 and 7. It says, after leaving the Caspian Sea and the Scythian Ocean, our course takes a bend toward the Eastern Sea. This is the country of the cannibal Scythians who eat human bodies. Consequently, the adjacent districts are waste districts thronging with wild beasts lying in wait for human beings as savage as themselves. This was just one of the places. You do not want to go there. On page 326, he talks again about these Scythian cannibals. He says, we have pointed out that some Scythian tribes, and in fact a good many, feed on human bodies, a statement that perhaps may seem incredible if we do not reflect that races of this portentous character have existed in the central region of the world named Cyclops and Lastronges, and that quite recently the tribe of the parts beyond the Alps habitually practiced human sacrifice. And he says that this was in a place they called the Urs Dorbolt, and it was associated with Hyperborea. It says, but beyond the other Scythian cannibals in a certain large valley of the Himalayas, there's a region called Abamrayan, where are some people dwelling in the forest who have their feet turned backwards behind their legs, who run extremely fast and range abroad over the country with the wild animals. The description that we see of these people is, and I think we definitely have some animal-human inbreeding here. Not all of these creatures were even all human. They were inbred with animal genetics. Cannibals, they were just some doggone bad dudes. And in Volume 2 of Pliny the Elder, in the other text, it talked about the wild animals that they would just run with these wild animals, and you can just see the picture of the mixing of the animal and the human genome with these Scythians. And Pliny in Volume 2 on page 140, he says, the Pegasus bird with the horse's head and the griffin with ears and a terrible hooked beak, the former said to be found in Scythia and the latter in Ethiopia. And the Pegasus bird was associated with these Scythian people. And here we see the Pegasus, and of course, they were all about these Scythians. They were the horsemen. We talked about that, their association with the horse. And here we see this Scythian riding upon the winged Pegasus horse. And it's not too hard to fill in the blanks there about what we had going on with these folks. Now, in Genesis 6 Giants by Stephen Quayle, I want to read a quote. And there is an excellent chapter on European giants in this book. And there's a quote here that he takes from Herodotus. And this is going to show us how that the right side of that graph, how that Magog to the Scythians, they came over into the left side, from Gomer to the Gauls to the Galatians, and they crossed over. These people that were just wilder than goose grease, they come over to the other side and basically took over within this people group as the high priestly class. And on page 233, Mr. Quayle, he writes this. Uh, ex- Explains Herodotus, the Greek historian also claimed that after a battle, the custom, at least among the Scythian Celts, now there we go. That's what we don't want to miss. There were Scythian Celts, the Scythians that came across and they made their home within this other line that came down from Gomer. And these Scythian Celts, they were these wild, stay out of their way people that formed this Druidic religion. He says the Scythian Celts, it was the custom among the Scythian Celts for every man to drink the blood of the first man he kills. Additionally, as both Roman and Greek were to learn, the Celts also scalped their victims. From these skins, they fashioned garments that looked something like handkerchiefs. These they proudly attached to the bridles of their horses. As a side note, it is easy to see how the early American Celtic presence in America may have taught the Indians the custom of scalping their adversaries. So this little deal of scalping, this wasn't something that the Indians come up with themselves, but they learned it, and we're going to get the crossover from these people. The Scythians, they became the Scythian Celts, aka the Druids, that became this ruling class among the Gauls. And we're going to see here, this is the Encyclopedia Americana, and we're going to see that very early, these people were travelers, and they came, it's documented now that they came into England very early. And on page 185, and this is volume 6 of the Encyclopedia Americana, and it says it's under the article Celtic Peoples. It says, and it asks the question, were the Celts and the Gauls ethnically one people? Is now definitely answered in the affirmative. Yes, absolutely. The Celts and the Gauls were the same people, and the Gauls and the Galatians were the same people. And it goes on into this article, and it says, as early as the 9th century BC, some of them crossed the Channel and settled in what is now Great Britain. And these people, and we're talking 900 BC, they begin to set up their power base in England. And of course, in England, they became known as the Druids.
Yeah, it's interesting how that all works too, because oftentimes when people hear stuff like this, so this is what always threw me off, David, about all of this stuff, is because the people in the area didn't necessarily have the same heritage as the rulers or the priestly class. In fact, they never did.
Yeah.
Almost never, unless it was like the actual group of people, because as we talked about in the last show, or one of the last shows, the operations of these Babylonian and continued leaders would be to conquer lands, put their people in charge, and leave and keep going out and conquering. They were wild men that just kept going, but they conquered everything while not having their own cities. It was pretty amazing the way they did it. But this is kind of the same kind of thing with the Druids and the priestly class. That's why you see in Africa, like these Egyptians. We know that most Egyptians were not blonde hair, blue eyed, or red headed. We know that it wasn't the case, but the rulers were. Yeah. Which is, where does this come from? Why do we see the same pyramids all over the world? Why do we see that? I mean, that's what hung me up for the longest time. Now I get it. That there were a ruling class and there were a priestly class that continued to do that all over the world. And it was just amazing. It's amazing to me but that always hung me up. And that's why I could never really figure out. It's like, so is it these people? Is it these people? What we don't realize is the people that rule the world still to this day, the kings and stuff, they all come from these lineages, and they don't represent, like the King of England doesn't represent the English people, right? He's not really English, really, in all honesty. And in fact, most of those people in England are no longer English anymore. They've been so manipulated, but it's crazy to me to think about this. It just blows my mind. I don't know why. I know that people are like, well, duh. But for me, it's something that clicked in the last few months.
It is, and the more we dig, and it's true right here in our area, there was a battle fought that the Indians recorded in their history right over where right near where John Hall is over there, where the Ohio River forks just by the Indiana and Kentucky border.
Yeah.
There's an island there where the Indians say that they fought a battle and that there were blonde-haired, blue-eyed giants that they destroyed.
Yes, I remember hearing about that.
They went over there and they just destroyed them.
Yeah.
And always there's this ruling class that rules over that is ethnically different from the people. This is a huge, huge thing we see over and over and over.
Yeah, it's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like the middle piece almost, so you need to know.
It is.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to trace these things, and it really takes a lot of work and a lot of digging. And always there's the spin. You know, the Druids, well, they're just like New Agers, aren't they? I mean, they're just like kind-hearted New Agers that, run through the woods naked every once in a while, but they don't hurt nobody, just little witchy New Ager people.
Yeah.
But that's not what we got going on here.
No, man, they were brutal people. And I remember we were doing a study on that, and we talked about this, but the Druids, the Druid priests were big, tall men. They weren't no punks, right? They were big, beastly, ghastly people. And when people think of Druidism, this is really kind of the roots of like a lot of the Europeans in general, right? It's just
and not only in another whole aspect of the Druids is they functioned in the political realm as a fierce secret society. And there's a Druid that almost everyone has heard of from England, Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill was a Druid.
Yeah.
So that's another whole part of this onion. And of course, you've got to have the spin. You have to plant the idea in the mind of what the Druids were. And when we do that, well, we can kind of pencil in the scenario that we want to put in. Now, I want to read from Adam Clark's commentary. And Adam Clark's commentary, and I'm going to read from a note. This is on Romans 9:33, if you have the commentary, but it's very, 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 very insightful. And he says this, and he talks about the Gauls too. And Adam Clark and everybody else knew the Gauls were the Galatians. But he said the Gauls, equally cruel in their worship, sacrificed men originally to Eso and to Ate, and latterly to Mercury, Apollo, Mars, Jupiter, and Minerva. Caesar informs us that whenever they thought themselves in danger, whether from sickness or after any considerable defeat in war, being persuaded that unless life be given for life, the anger of the gods can never be appeased, they constructed wicker images of enormous bulk, which they filled with men who were first suffocated with smoke and then consumed by fire. Wow. The Wicker Man. Yeah. The Wicker Man came from the Gauls. And here again, this makes sense when we see that they were doing the Wicker Man there in Galatia before it was ever done in England.
Yeah.
And when the Druids, this was a big deal with them. We had the movie, The Wicker Man, and we all know about it, but not many people know that this come right there from the Gauls.
Wow.
Now.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And there's no mistaking the connection here on these folks. Now, we've talked about this before, and we just would be remiss if we didn't revisit this here at this point on the Golden Bough. And this is on page 405 of you Golden Bough readers. And it talks here about the Arch Gullus and the Galli. And oh boy, I'll just read a little of this text on page 405. The Golden Bough by Sir George Fraser. He was a Oxford professor. And this is a very scholarly work. This is not a book by some occultist. This is a book of hard research, and it is the most authoritative book on the mystery religion. It's really, really a good book to have. But anyway, it says, on the 22nd day of March, a pine tree was cut in the woods and brought into the sanctuary of Cybele, where it was treated as a great divinity. The duty of carrying the sacred tree was entrusted to a guild of tree bearers. The Arch Gallus. Now here again we understand that it was the Gauls. And the priesthood of the head of this priesthood over the Gauls was called the Archgallus. It says, nor was he alone. It says the Archgallus or high priest drew blood from his arms and presented it as an offering. Nor was he alone in making this bloody sacrifice. Stirred by the wild, barbaric mutes of clashing cymbals, rumbling drums, droning horns, and screaming flutes, the inferior clergy whirled about in the dance with waggling heads and streaming hair until, wrapped into a frenzy of excitement and insensible to pain, they gashed their bodies with potsherds or slashed them with knives in order to bespatter the altar of the sacred tree with flowing blood. Now, I hope I ruin it for some of you Christmas tree folks, but this is where the Christmas colors red and green come from.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very graphic, but it's very true. How it's even hard. The rites of Christmas and Easter are so dark. It's hard to really talk about the roots of them. It's embarrassing, and shame on people from participating in these ancient demonic rites. It says the ghastly. It says. With potsherds or slashed them with knives in order to besplatter the altar of the sacred tree with the flowing blood. The ghastly rite probably formed part of the mourning for Attis. It was the same day of blood for the same purpose that the novices sacrificed their virility. Now, this is what is so important. Literally, they castrated themselves, and they offered their virility as an offering to the goddess. What is going on now? The chemical castration of children. This is a demonic ritual. It's more than just something that's bad and should never be done. There's a religious right to this. It's an offering up to this ancient deity of this ancient king of fierce countenance. They're there to destroy, and the men that serve must surrender their masculinity.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, it's amazing because there's so many people coming out now, Christian people that have once brought this stuff out, and they're saying that there's no evidence of pagan worship in Christmas and Easter, but they've obviously never read this book, which this book, I don't, like David said before, and there's people that may doubt what it is, but just 5 minutes of research would lead you to know that this is one of the most influential books of all time when it comes to that, not only for education purposes, but mainly for education purposes, I guess. But I believe, like David said, it's a good book to have because there's so many things that we do in society that we have no idea where it comes from.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's in this book. It'll tell you exactly where it comes from.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no reason to be ignorant, really.
Yeah, and how anybody, get me going. I don't want to go down that bunny trail. I'll get red in the face and start hollering, but it is just awful. People need a big dose of the fear of God.
Yep.
And to walk in the commandments of God and not in this demonic nonsense that's being passed off as Christianity. The text, we have to read this text in Galatians 4. And this is the text that is so often used against people like us. We're getting ready to celebrate the Feast of Pentecost. And we are told that by many, well, that's just not what you need to do. And they use this verse here, among others, that they twist to try to use them against us in our pursuit to obey the commandments of God and not the traditions of man. And in Galatians 4, it says, but now, and remember here, the Galatians are the Gauls, and the people Paul was speaking to, they were ruled over by this, literally, these giants that were, they were a good, history records, they were a good foot or more taller than the average person, and they were the ruling class, and these were the Scythians. These were the Scythian Celts that ruled over these people. And it says, but now, after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again? Now, these Galatian people, these Gallic people, they had never in their life celebrated the Feast of Pentecost or the Feast of Passover, but they did celebrate these pagan holidays. And we're going to get into these Scythians. They were all about the astronomy and the worship of the host of heaven, celebrating their special days. Anyone that knows anything about Druidism knows that to be true, but these people were not going back into obeying the Old Testament feasts. They were going back into their demonic rituals. How turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, stoichion, where ye desire again to be in bondage? They were going back into bondage to something they had before they come to Christ, which was this Gallic ritual celebration of holidays. My goodness, ye observe days and months and times and years. I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. Paul was concerned with their salvation, and I'll be honest, I'm concerned with the salvation of people that can participate in this rankly demonic idolatry of the pagan holidays and feel no conviction on it. I fear for your soul. I really fear for your soul. And it is just amazing the way people take these things and they flip them on their heads. Now, this is one of the most famous Druidic monuments. This is Stonehenge in England. And today, as we say the spin that's put about Stonehenge, well, yeah, they're just little, boy, they're wise. You know, they had a lot of secrets. You know, they hippie New Agers, and boy, they can tell you something. Well, I want to read from the Man, Myth, and Magic books, and I want to read something. This is on page 2703, and here the trail gets very, very interesting. And in the article on Stonehenge in Man, Myth, and Magic, it says, the king of the Britons sought the advice of Merlin on a suitable memorial, and the magician recommended the use of vast stones brought from the structure he called the Giant's Dance. It is an interestingly tangled legend containing elements of Arthurian myth, the age-old belief in the magic of stones. Now, the story of the founding of Stonehenge is tied in with the legend of King Arthur and with Merlin, and this takes us right back to something John put on the table in the show on Attila the Hun, how that this whole scenario of the legend of King Arthur was created by Attila the Hun.
Yeah, man, it's amazing, and the more I read into the Arthurian legends, I'm amazed at what we see, because you have this period of Dark Ages, and then the next bit of history you have is these Arthurian legends, and it's just really strange, man. There's so much about it that is just veiled, and you're right, we did bring that out in that show, and that was really mind-blowing to me to find it out myself.
Yeah, that just was one of them aha moments.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, could this really be true? And well, yeah, it is. And then to find out that this all was the story of the origin of Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Now that
amazing.
is that's intriguing, isn't it?
It really is.
And could it all be about, and you see, I'll read a little text here. This is the book that John quoted frequently from in his presentation just here recently, but I'll read a little bit from Mr. Herbert's book. And it says here, the era of Attila was marked by a very general expectation of the revelation of Antichrist. It has been already mentioned that it was prophesied to Aetius in his youth that he was able to be some great one, and by which expression is meant a divine incarnation, speaking of how Attila looked at himself. Now, the idea was he started the whole myth of King Arthur and maybe even built Stonehenge for the purpose of enthroning himself as Antichrist. Now, you think about predictive programming.
Yeah.
And predictive programming, we've seen it over and over from movies coming down from these elites in the entertainment industry. This could be the first documented case of predicted programming where Attila creates a story that people will apply to him for the purpose of enthroning himself as the beast.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. It's amazing, man. I think that we're going to find out some really interesting stuff. Eventually, all this will come to light, and I think we're bringing it to light. But my question is, I guess out of all of this, one of the biggest questions I have is when they bring this information out, like when it's brought to the attention, kind of like these bloodlines, who they are, who is going to be the king of all these bloodlines, it's going to blow a lot of people's mind.
Yeah.
They're not going to have any expectation of this. Now, there have been people ringing the alarms, but man, like they're going to, most people think of Attila, they think of an Asian dude riding a horse, like some guy up in the snowy mountains riding a horse around, and of course brutal, but they don't realize like on the cover of this book that you guys are looking at, this is the most common depiction of the dude. He looks like King Arthur, right? And he had a bunch of knights that run around killing everybody and taking over lands. So that's exactly what the Templars and all the different knighthoods did. So anyways, I don't know.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about, and I remember I asked you the question because I wanted to qualify this, what he really looked like.
Yeah.
He was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed dude.
Yes, he was. Yep.
Yeah. Boy. Okay. All right. Now, one more thing here from Mr. Herbert before we move on. And he talks about the prophecy in Revelation 12 about the man-child being brought forth. And he talks about, there's the Christian understanding of this, but Attila saw himself as the man-child being brought forth. He believed that he was destined to be this one that would destroy Christianity. Mm-hmm. And that's what he was all about. That's what he wanted to do. And this, I'll just read this little bit of text here from Mr. Herbert. It says, this prophecy was at that time understood universally by the sincere Christians to refer to the birth of Constantine, who was to overthrow the paganism of the city on the seven hills. And it is still so explained. But it is evident that the heathens must have looked upon it in a different light and have regarded it as a foretelling of the birth of that great one who should master the temporal power of Rome.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. What page is that on, David?
That is on, and it's in section 24. Section 24. That's in section 24. This book doesn't have page numbers. Right. It has sections for those who wonder what we're talking about. But yeah, so it's getting heavy now. It's getting a little bit heavy. And this is all going to lead up to taking a stab at here real soon, trying to figure out who that middle head of the eagle is. Yep. Now, I want to read from page another volume here of Man, Myth, and Magic. Man, Myth, and Magic is something I've acquired. I used to have some of them years ago, but it's a 24-volume encyclopedia of the occult that was put out in the 70s. It's just a exhaustive source of information. And here in the article on the Druids in Man, Myth, and Magic, it says this, and oh boy, this is a biggie. Most early writers agreed that Stonehenge should be attributed to the cult of Apollo. Now we've got something, and we've just got another little piece of the onion that is being peeled off. And Apollo in the scripture, and here again, something way over here in England, and we don't connect this with this ancient paganism that took place on the continent. And in Revelation chapter 9 and verse 11, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. And that word Apollyon sounds a lot like Apollo, doesn't it? Yep. And these are all from the same root word, the word here in Revelation 9:11, Apollyon, and also the word in this text in the scripture in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3, where we see, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. This also comes back to the same word family of Apollo, Apollyon. It's Apollo. And so if Stonehenge was built at the instigation of this myth of King Arthur, representing the beast that would crush Rome, and it was dedicated to Apollo, who is spoken of as the beast in the book of Revelation, we see some serious intent here.
That makes sense with the Babylon, the whore of Babylon getting thrown off the back, and Rome being connected. It makes a lot of sense. Why is it describing Rome? Because we know Rome's got some bad boys in it too. You know, that's interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
So the deep intent, and you see it all comes back. It all comes back to Japheth, and we can trace this down right to where they come over into the Gauls, and right here, and we're going to take them even farther. But we can see here the absolute intent we got going on here. One more thing here from Man, Myth, and Magic. This is from another volume. This is the article on Stonehenge. It says, today it is commonly thought that the Druids built the place as a sun-worshipping temple and site for human sacrifice. This is something that is kind of lost in the shuffle with the Druids, but they absolutely practice human sacrifice. And this goes all the way back to those little guys that would run around in the woods and eat people. It also says here, and this is another really big point, it says people have believed that Stonehenge was either a temple or a place of worship, or a vastly important meeting place for chiefs or kings, or a structure for observing and predicting the movement of heavenly bodies, mainly the sun and the moon. The last idea is based on the belief that the sun rises at the summer solstice directly over the heel stone, as seen from the center of Stonehenge. These people, all the way back to the Scythians, they were all about the worship of the host of heaven, predicting the movements of the heavenly luminaries, and have big old gut-busting celebrations when the powers in the second heaven were to their liking. That's what these people were all about.
Yeah.
Now, get ready for this. This is what's called the American Stonehenge. It's Mystery Hill in New Hampshire, and we're going to show, I mean, there is so much stuff here. I have a book here called America BC. This was written by a fellow from Harvard, and Barry Fell was his name. This was written back in the 70s, and I won't hold it against him that he was from Harvard, because I think he was a pretty good guy. But, yeah, and he was really a great, great researcher. And this is a picture of the table of sacrifice at Mystery Hill. And you see here on this table of sacrifice, there's a groove at the bottom right. This is for the blood to drain out into a ritual cup that caught the blood right there at the bottom for their libations. And this is nothing but pure Canaanite. Mr. Fell documents, they've found these all over. You know, this is not something that was invented over here by the Indians of the story. Well, you know, there was no contact, you know, in ancient times. That's just a huge porky. Yeah. And this sacrifice stone here at the American Stonehenge, and many, many more. We could do an entire midnight ride on all the structures here that are found in New Hampshire. This is just nothing but pure Celtic, pure Canaanite, 100% bad.
It's interesting. You know, there's this temple I'm looking at that you're talking about, Canaanite temples. And I remember a long time ago, Rob Skiba did a show on this. You remember that, where he talked about the Canaanite temple, and he showed those altars that they had on there? And this looks almost identical to it.
I think I do, yeah.
And I'm looking at another place here, and this is supposed to be the old temple of Apollo, and it looks to have an altar right in the front of it as well, which is pretty intense. They're pretty crazy here, which makes sense, obviously, but still, yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah, they were going to kill you, and they're going to make a head out of your bowl and drink your blood. And yeah, these were not little New Agers.
Yeah.
Now we've got a I want to read a little quote here from Jones Dictionary. Run me up a couple slides here. Let me see my place
Okay.
here. Where we're
Sorry
at,
about
John.
that, David. Here, let
We
me go
might-
here. I think we're I put Jones Dictionary at the end. So
Okay,
that's my,
let's come back to them. Let's come back to that. Let's go to the next. Let's go to this picture here of the. That's it. Let's look
Okay.
at this right
all
here.
righty. I must have put them in the wrong place. My
Okay,
apologies.
we'll get it sorted here, as Inspector Frost says. But we want to look at this right now, and this is actually a Google Earth that shows a direct line of alignment between the actual Stonehenge and the Stonehenge, the American Stonehenge in New Hampshire. These things are directly aligned with the summer solstice, and you can say the same thing with the Serpent Mound in Ohio. The Serpent Mound in Ohio, the head of it is pointing directly up at where the solstice takes place. This is a perfect geographical alignment with the actual Stonehenge, and there's all kinds of inscriptions here. Well, just one of them that Mr. Fell talks about. There's all kind of Celtic inscriptions, and here at the American Stonehenge, there's a inscription that says, "To Baal of the Canaanites," is the inscription on a stone found there.
Yeah.
But yet there was before Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, there was no diffusion. You know, the black people did not come to South Americas. The Olmecs, the Celts didn't come over. Such lies.
Yeah.
Such lies.
I think when he came over here and he said he saw Indians, you know why I think he said he saw Indians? It's because he did. The Indians were Aryans.
Yeah.
He saw Aryans over here, and that's the big hidden thing here in America, I believe. These Aryans were here setting up these altars.
Yeah, they were.
And this is what they were doing here. And like when he said he saw Indians, he wasn't stupid.
No.
He wasn't an idiot. Like
No.
he saw literal Aryans because that's what the
Yeah.
Indians were. They were Aryans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. It's amazing. But, you know, it is just nonsensical to try to spin to fill the heads of people that want to try to go to somewhere to get an education. Just fill them with lies.
Yeah.
Just fill their head with lies. And
Yeah.
there's a reason why they're lying to people. There's obvious reasons. And
the reason he would even said they're Indians would have been, if you think about it, the only reason he would have said that there's Indians there is because he would have seen these structures. He would have known that the rulers there, that's what they were. I mean, that's the only way he would have said that, because you're right, they're all over the place, and it only makes sense if the rulers of those areas were these Aryans, or whatever you want to call them, Aryans, Gomerites, Gauls, Scythians, whatever, you know.
all the same.
Yeah.
And there was another Spanish explorer, I can't recall just which one it was, but in South America, there's the Isle of Patagonia. And he talked about the Patagonian giants. And this is another one of the many confirming episodes. And he was one of the famous explorers. And I can't remember which one, but yeah, there was a lot that he wrote about the Patagonian giants that were there.
Yeah.
You know, when he landed.
Dude, it explains a lot about Redskins. So, like,
Yeah.
so these people, like, still to this day, some of these tribes paint themselves red because they wanted to look like their rulers. They wanted it was like a red painting. So, like, them getting rid of the Reds and the red, you know, they can't, or whatever, the Chiefs and the Reds and all the different Indian tribes. I think they're trying to hide something interesting there, because when you look back to all these tribes of Indians, they say this. I know I'm getting off a little bit, and we're going to probably go a little bit longer. It's not really off on a tangent, but it's legitimate information. But
yeah.
they say these Native Americans, Native South Americans, whatever you want to call them, if they're Native Americans at all, where they came from, we don't know 100% yet. We do know that they were here, but they say they didn't build these things. They didn't do it themselves.
Yeah.
Something else, powerful people were here that did it. And I mean, I believe them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that's true of the Serpent Mound over there in Ohio, the Indians say, well, it was there when we got here. Our oldest records of the oldest we have memory of, it was there when we got here.
Yeah. Exactly, man.
Yeah, and so many, they're just over and over the story of the Anastasis out in the western part of our country, where they talked about, fighting this tribe that were ethnically different.
Yeah.
These giants.
Yeah.
It's over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Now,
They can't hide it anymore.
no, and this is the back there's the picture here. It shows an illustration of the practice of the Aztecs, where they would, it's well known that they would do the human sacrifice. And the really good Aztec priest, if he really was on his game, he could take a person's heart out and he could eat it while it was still beating. Yeah. And their goal was to let the last thing that sacrificial victim seen with their eyes, to actually see him biting and eating their own heart. Yeah. The last thing his eyes recorded. I mean, you talk about dark. I tell you what, this is about as dark gets.
Yeah.
And these things were not something that they just come up with on their own. These were things that were brought in by these people that came here. And a lot of it, I believe, it comes right back from the time of the dispersion of Babel, when we can trace these peoples into this area. And we're going to see that our area right here, we tomorrow night, Tracy and I, we're going to talk about one of the landing spots, which was down in Central America. And we are in another landing spot right here. I'm thoroughly convinced of it. The more we see, we've got concrete evidence that this is where a lot of people from the dispersion of Babel came, right here.
Yeah.
And this whole Ohio Valley area that runs from here and up into the area there where Brian Reese lives, and the things he's brought to light with the Serpent Mound there.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't long ago, George Washington was right across the water over there, had his own company traveling up and down the river, kings of France, princes of France.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. I mean, all the majors lived around here.
Yeah.
Just even from then.
They sure did. Now, I want to read something here, and I'll bring it local here. We'll get it local. This is from the set of books called the Great Books of the Western World by Britannica. This is volume 6. And I want to read from the Roman historian Herodotus. And Herodotus talks about the Scythians. And we get a consistent picture from all of these ancient sources that these guys were bad to the bone. This is on page 134, volume. This is actually book 4, section 64. I'm going to read a little bit of book 4, section 64, and a snippet from 65 of the works of Herodotus. And Herodotus said this. He says, "In what concerns war, their customs are the following. The Scythian soldier drinks the blood of the first man he overthrows in battle. Whatever number he slays, he cuts off all the heads and carries them to the king, since he is thus entitled to a share of the booty, whereunto he forfeits all claim if he does not produce a head." You want to make sure to keep the head, or you don't collect the reward. Goes on to say, "The skulls of the enemies, not indeed of all, but of those whom they most detest, they treat as follows. Having sawn off the portion below the eyebrow and cleaned out the inside, they cover the outside with leather. When a man is poor, this is all that he does. But if he is rich, he also lines the inside with gold. In either case, the skull is used as a drinking cup. They do the same with the skulls of their own kilt and kin, if they have been at feud with them and have vanquished them in the presence of the king." Now, this is where it gets real local here right now. And we're going to, I think it's July 4th, we're going to do a FOJC Sunday Night Rumble, Brian Reese and I. Brian's all over this. I'll tell you, he's all over this. And I'll just read this next quote here. We get a little bit here from Frank Joseph, but there's so more. In this book here, Advanced Civilizations of Prehistoric America by Frank Joseph, he says this. He says, human skull bowls have been retrieved from several Adena mounds, most notably at Kentucky's Fisher site in Fayette County, where 3 were discovered in a single earthwork.
Wow.
This was going on in our area.
Yeah.
We're right in the middle of it.
Well, especially if these people like you're talking about came over here, because they
Yeah.
would have done it for sure. Like I was
Yeah.
talking to you earlier about in the show about the skull where they would drink from it, the gray skull which represented the moon, which represented the cycle of women. They would drink that cycle of women every month out of this gray. There had to be a skull. It had to be a human skull. They would drink it out of as this ritual, and I bet you it still goes on in the dark around here. Like you're talking about these celebrations, what they have out there in California, you know what I'm talking about, the big forest celebration they have every year with all the Gauls and
the
Druid,
Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
And right now we were have found out that more and more right over here at West Baden where they have the big hotel, that is becoming a big center for New Age gatherings. There's some huge ones. There's one going on right near the time of our Pentecost celebration. It's become a huge gathering place for New Agers.
Yeah.
And it's really growing.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how Odinism has grown so big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's undeniable. And the practices of, I mean, it's local. We're right here. And there's just so much more we're going to say about that. And old brother Brian, he's all over that. That's just the tip of the iceberg there. But, I mean, you don't get that every day.
Right.
There's a lot of murder and a lot of killing going on, but it ain't every day they cut your head off and work on it and make it into a drinking bowl.
That's true.
That's pretty distinctive.
Yeah.
And we can trace that right here in our area. And that's making more and more sense as we go along, how that after the dispersion at Babel, these there's common identifying features, this priesthood that crop up in different cultures, and we can get a real good handle more and more as it go along that we can figure out what's going on here. Now, we're going to figure out a little more right here. I want to go to this book here. It's Jones Dictionary of Old Testament Names, and we're going to look at the word Anak, the word Anak. And, of course, this is where it's the biblical word for the giants, and this is the word that our ancient alien friends, they use the term Anunnaki.
Mm-hmm.
Same people. These are these ancient giants from the Levant that are talked about in Scripture. Now, this is the Jones Dictionary. He traces the etymology of this word Anak, and it's very, very interesting. It means long-necked, length of neck, and stature. And Gesenius, in his Hebrew lexicon, he quotes Gesenius, Torques, the ornamentum parentum. And literally, the word torque comes in the etymology, the chain of etymology, back from this word for a knock, and we're going to see what that word torque means.
Wow.
And it says also, it means a collar, a neck chain, a necklace from the root to adorn with the neck chain or collar. Now, just as a side thought here, everybody knows that the Catholic priests wear the collar. Where is there anything in the Bible that would make you think, I've never felt like, boy, I need to put a collar on? There's nothing in the Bible about that, is there?
Yeah.
Now, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Does it come from God?
I've always wondered that myself.
Yeah. Now, this is actually, and as Brother Jones quoted here, he was quoting Gesenius' Hebrew lexicon in the etymology of the word torque, and this is a picture here on the right. This is a bronze torque about 400 BC discovered in France, and this was the trademark of the Celtic people, the Celtic warriors. And here on the left, there's a picture. This is called the Dying Gaul. And the Dying Gaul there you see with this torque around their collar. It was worn by all these Celtic warriors, these Celtic Scythians. This was one of the trademarks of this priestly ruling class that dominated over the Gallic people. And you can see the etymology. It is an unmistakable trail to where this picture just begins to make more and more and more sense as we go on. So I think with that, John, we're just about going to come to a halt for tonight. We've peeled the onion a little more, and we've traced the trail a little further, and the trail doesn't end here, my friends.
Yeah, man.
I tell you what, next week, get ready. It's going to be a popper.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, it's going to keep popping and popping. We're chasing these little rascals, and we're seeing more and more as time goes on.
Yeah, and we'll have to do a follow-up too on these on Rumble sometime so we can speak, really openly about some of these things. But yeah, this was intriguing to me, David. This really helped fill in some spots for me next week too by going through this. This was awesome, and just the revelations that are brought forth in this really make so much sense. It's hard to make sense of the world, and I think by design they do it that way on purpose so that we just can keep confused. Confusion obviously brings devastation to armies, to people in general. And God's not the author of confusion. We know that they are, but trying to figure this stuff out has been, for me, a lifelong goal, and I know for you as well.
Yeah.
And it seems like we get closer and closer and closer to this, and I think that right now is the time that it's going to be exposed on purpose.
Yeah.
Not just by us, but by them.
Yeah.
So being ahead of it's good.
Yeah, it is. And John and I were talking, before the broadcast, and, we're not going to stop it. We're not going to do a YouTube midnight ride and the devil fold his tent, leave town.
Yeah.
Ain't going to happen. We know that. But what will happen is the Israel of God, we're going to know how to position ourselves, to understand our role, to preach the gospel and preach truth.
Amen.
To be obedient to the doctrine of Christ and the commandments of God, to be a vessel in his hand, reaching out of the darkness, showing people the truth. And the darker it gets, the more the truth is going to be revealed.
Amen.
So we're at a really crucial time. We're at a time like never before where it's just hard to ignore. I mean, the lies are just, it's to such a level that more and more people are just having to say, man, these people are just liars.
Yeah, either that or they're taking the bad route. They're saying we're going to be evil, or we're going to be, there's like no, it's almost like the gray area is disappearing anymore, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just the people are not, they're going to say either they're evil or they're good, and they're not going to make no qualms about it.
Yeah.
And of course they're calling evil good and good evil now.
Yeah.
Because we're evil compared to, by the rulers of the world, we are a risk. We have been struck on YouTube. We have been, your channel got taken down one time. We've had they demonetized us, done everything they can to get people to forget about us, whatever it may take, right? And they're doing it. And of course, eventually it'll get even worse, but now they're doing it, just kind of keeping it on the low, doing it here. They've done it to other people already. But man, we're considered the bad guys.
Yeah, and you told me something before the broadcast tonight. I never knew that we've actually been banned in certain foreign countries.
Yes.
I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're watching from this country and you ever do lose track, your country bans us, there are IP things you can get to where it switches your IP to another country so you can view it from other places. So if you are going to get banned eventually, remember that. Because we're going to keep going until we don't breathe anymore.
That's exactly right. There's no plan B. There's no plan B, and the Lord just becomes more marvelous and more wonderful as we go on. It is such a privilege to just be able to be Jesus, or it was David, he said that he's come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Or no, that wasn't David. That might have been, I can't remember who said that. So my computer's getting rusty, but I know maybe it was in Esther. I don't know. But anyway, somebody said it. I've come into the kingdom for such a time as this. Maybe that was Queen Esther. But
Esther.
That was Esther.
It's Esther 4:14.
All right. But and that's the way we are. It is not a coincidence that we are where we're at this very point in time, that the Lord has showed us certain things. and the role that we are to play here. And that role is to preach the gospel and bring people into the truth and the knowledge of Jesus Christ, to help them see what's going on, so we can work our way through this thing, and we will. You know, we're gonna stay right on the wall, and we're gonna preach the gospel and serve the Lord and just rejoice in one another.
And by the grace of God, there's still thousands of people that listen to this broadcast. But I'll tell you this, and I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant or anything. I've seen videos out there that get millions of plays that are just junk and garbage, false information, horrible sound. Everything about it sucks. Yeah. But it's got millions of plays. We're definitely getting underplayed for what the quality's worth of this show as far as information that we put out. So like when people are like, yeah, well, you're getting, this many views still, and you got this many thing going on, so you must be part of the opposition. We should have way more. Let's put it that way. When we first started doing this before we were banned, we get 1 million views on some of the videos. So it's there's definitely that going on. So pray that more people get it, but at the same time, God may be telling us, like, these are the people that need to hear it. Like, if they don't hear it, God's putting it in front of the people that they need to hear, I think. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I know that there are so many of you that are so good to pray for us and to support us, that your heart is linked with ours in this battle. Your heart is one with us, and that's what gives us our strength, and that's what enables us to keep firing away, and we just thank you all, sir, for that. So with that, we're going to close our broadcast for this evening, and I guess we got a little business to take care of, that little Pounders Pound thing.
Yes, the Pounders Pound. That's when we all just pound that like button. And don't break your computer, your mouse. I don't want to get emails tomorrow. I'll be like, you told me to pound my button, and now I can't even use my mouse. Do it, but if you break your mouse, I won't buy you a new one, but I will at least give you kudos for pounding it so hard, right? So,
and we can guarantee you that there will be no mice injured in this Pounders. No mice will be hurt.
Yes.
So,
all right, David, count us down. Let's do this.
1, 2, 3. Boom.
Man, that was a good one. Thank you guys so much for listening, man. We appreciate you guys so very much. We can't wait to see some of you guys in person on the 28th. And if you didn't hear about that, check out the link in the description, the Pentecost at the Puritan barn. It's going to be on fire. It's going to be awesome. And we hope to see you guys there. And with that being said, that's all I got. Also, Breaking Babylon tomorrow on Breaking Babylon YouTube. David has his broadcast at 8 p.m. on FOJC YouTube, right?
Underground Church
YouTube
That's
channel. Right. So make sure you guys check that out. We love you guys. David, end us out.
With much thanks unto all of you and unto the Father that makes this all possible. Thank you so much. And until next Saturday night, 10 p.m. Central, high five and good night, everybody, from the Midnight Ride.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up.